we're going to want to do before we start. One is we want to put in the patient's name, as I've done here. And we also want to put today's date. So I have May 1st of 20, so it's futuristic. Notice that we have room on this probing sheet for 3 different full mouth probes. We have today's date, the next time we do a full mouth probe, which is 2, and the third time is under date 3. Before you start, you always want to familiarize yourself with the recording sheet. So up here we have the maxillary, and right below we have the mandibular teeth. We also want to figure out where are we going to record facial readings and where are we going to record our lingual readings. So our facial is here, so we're going to record up in these boxes for facial readings. The lingual is here, so we're going to record on this side of the teeth for our lingual readings. Also familiarize yourself with where is the midline on this record. And our date lines are over here. So number 1 is going to correspond with today's date. 2 would be date 2, and 3 would be our third date. So this is going to accommodate up to and including 3 full mouth probes. This numbering sheet uses the International Numbering System, which is a Canadian adopted system. So you also want to familiarize yourself with the teeth. So here we have 1-8, 1-7, 1-6, 1-5, and so on. So before you start, you want to be familiar with the chart you are going to be using. The next thing I like to do is determine, well, which teeth are missing, and we want to take those ones out of the equation. So for myself, I'm missing my wisdom teeth, and they're crossed off here on the charting record. Now I also want to take those out of the probing equation so that the numbers get put in the appropriate boxes. So there's 2 ways you can do this. One is you could put a line through all 3 boxes, because those wisdom teeth are not coming back, so that on future probings you don't have to do anything to describe or illustrate that those teeth are missing. Another way you can do it is you can do a horizontal line like this to take that tooth out of the equation as well. I prefer this type of vertical line just because if you do it once, you're not going to have to do it on the next 2 probing visits. However you do it is up to you though. When we look at each probing box, so this box here corresponds to tooth number 1-7, facial, where this box here is going to correspond to 1-7, lingual. If you could imagine each box is divided into 3 sections, we'd have a distal, a facial, it's the middle, and the mesial. So to kind of illustrate that, imagine that it's divided into 3. This would be the distal reading, which would correspond here, the facial, which is the middle, and then the mesial. Before you start, you also want to have a red and blue pen handy. The blue pen is going to be used to mark down any probe readings that are 1 to 3. And the red pen is going to be used to mark down any probe readings which are 4 or higher. Bleeding points will also be written with red, and that can be a little dot or a star directly above or to the right of a reading. So for example, let's say this probe reading was 3, 2, 3. And the clinician says there was bleeding on the mesial. We would also put a little red dot or star, depending on how your office represents that, right above or just slightly to the right of that reading. So what this is telling me is that the distal facial reading was a 3, the straight facial was a 2, and the mesial was a 3, and it had some bleeding. Another important thing to know before you start is where is the clinician starting. So we need to know where it is we're going to start recording. If, for example, the clinician is going to start at the 1-7 distal facial, we're starting here. If they're starting at the 2-7 distal facial, we're starting here. So it's important to know, well, where are you starting? Okay, so before you started recording, you're taking out the missing teeth, you have your red and your blue pen ready, and now we know where they're starting. So let's say they're starting at 1-7 distal facial, and they started with 3-2-3 bleeding point on the mesial, and we'll carry on from there. And now they say 4-4-4 using a red pen. I'm going to record that. And then they say 3-2-4, and they say bleeding on the mesial. So what this is telling me, again, is that this 4 with the bleeding point is on 1-5 mesial, the straight facial is a 2, and the distal was a 3. And let's say we continue on, they say 3-2-3, 2-2-2, 2-1-2, 2-2-3, and we've reached the midline. Ideally, someone will call out midline when we reach the midline, so that if we're off anywhere, we can correct it at that point. At this point, the clinician will need to do the lingual surfaces, so it's important we know where they're starting. If they're starting at the 2-7 lingual, we're going to start down here on this line, dated number 1. If they're starting on 1-7 lingual, we're going to start here. So let's pretend they are going to start at 2-7 lingual. 3-3-3. 3-2-4. 4-4-5. 5-6-8. Bleeding on all 3 points, they say, so we're going to put bleeding above each one. 3-3-3. 3-2-2. 2-1-2. Midline. Now they're going to 1-7 distal lingual. It's important to know every clinician may do this different, so let them tell you where they're at, and then you go to the appropriate place.